And we are live.
Thank you. 1 minute to go. Welcome, Karen. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this special council meeting dated March 1st, 2020. Due to COVID-19 and recommendations by Waterloo Region Public Health to exercise social distancing and public gathering thresholds, Township Council meetings are currently being held electronically. Members of the public may watch this open meeting electronically by accessing the live stream on the Township's YouTube page that is available at calendar.northdumfries.ca/council. Under the video column, click on the link of the meeting date that you wish to watch. You do not need a YouTube account to watch this live stream. Members of the public interested in speaking as a delegate to the proposed Township Administrative Office may register to attend the virtual meeting or may submit written comments by emailing clerk@northdumfries.ca before 6 p.m. on Sunday, February 28th. I'd like to now call this meeting to order, and can I have approval of the agenda, please?
So moved by Councillor Gillespie, seconded by Councillor Roloman, that Council adopt the March 1st, 2021 special council meeting agenda as presented with the following addendums. 1, include additional background information as it relates to the council workshop session pertaining to the proposed township office project. 2, add closed session item 5, verbal report from the Chief Administrative Officer. Personal matters about an identifiable individual, including a municipal or local board employee, Municipal Act Section 239, subsection 2, subsection B. And 3, add item 6, reconvene into open session, and add item 7, business arising from closed session. Mayor Foxton, your vote for that?
Yes.
Councillor Roloman?
Yes.
Councillor Ossner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
Okay, that carries.
Thank you very much. And is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. Presentation from CAO McNeely as part of a council workshop session pertaining to the proposed township office project. CAO McNeely, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to load up my PowerPoint presentation and share my screen. So just take a moment. All right, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Tonight, I would like to walk through some aspects associated with the Municipal Civic project. This sort of builds on the information that we shared in August of 2020 as part of our continuing review of options and their potential implications as a go forward related to this initiative. So to assist everybody, just from a bit of a context perspective, the history, the township used to occupy the space at 1171 Greenfield Road, and in the mid part of 2015, the administration was moved to the North Dumfries Community Complex. Staff presently occupy several meeting and programming rooms at the NDCC. We also occupy a portable that was purchased and is now located in the west parking lot. Back in 2015, when the move was first announced to the NDCC, it was identified as an interim and temporary move to allow the township an opportunity to gauge its financial resources and to assess some options as it related to a future municipal office. In the township's 10-year capital budget, capital forecast, the 2021 to 2030 time period, we've identified that in 2021, $283,280 have been set aside related to design associated with the new municipal office, and approximately $4.8 million has been identified in 2022, and that deals with the physical construction of the new facility. These budget estimates for both 21 and 22 are based upon a simple design of a municipal office and do not include community elements to be touched on later in this presentation. It also does not contemplate the acquisition or purchase of land. The original budget, as presented, was based on utilizing existing land at the NDCC and capitalizing or leveraging on some of the existing site services that were built as part of the initial construction of the NDCC back in 2011. Township today has a population of approximately 11,200 persons. By 2031, as set out in our official plan, the population for the township is proposed to increase to a size of approximately 16,000 persons. So the Municipal Civic Center, the administrative space needs assessment, and the associated space allocation, in other words, how much square footage is required to accommodate administrative aspects, is based on the 2031 population as targeted in the township's official plan. So some of the key elements that we're going to touch upon this evening and have discussions. One would be assessing or reviewing the alternative space allocation models, the element and the incorporation of community space programming, the potential location for the siting of the new town hall and its fit within the overall campus of the property, green building components, dealing with energy efficiency and lowering greenhouse gas emissions, alternative construction delivery models, public consultation and engagement process, and a suggested time schedule. So, focusing specifically on the space allocation model, circulated as background information with the agenda were two charts. The first chart looked at future needs based on staff positions in various departments, the assignment of space for each of those positions. And on the second page was what I call the back of house. So washroom facilities, public washroom facilities, rooms, server room, storage space, and the like. All of these elements are broken out and listed. And then at the sum, we have the gross up by 30%, which is the circulation in the common space for form, function, and fit activities in the building itself. So some key elements that are built into the model. There would be a centralized customer service counter where all public-facing transactions would occur at this one-stop location. There is an office a dedicated office for the mayor, and there's a shared office with 2 workstations for the 4 ward councillors. The Dumfries Room, which exists in the western portion of the current NDCC, would continue to be utilized as a council chambers, a large meeting room, a training room for corporate purposes, and would be available when the room is not reserved for broader community programming by external user groups as a conference room. The office space within the space allocation model has been set aside for department head directors and staff members that deal with either sensitive material like human resources or payroll as 2 examples, or they have a high frequency of internal staff meetings, and there's the concern about noise emanating and disturbing other adjacent workspaces. The majority of the work areas for the administrative or technical staff are designed as workstations with centralized hydro, data, and telephone cabling that's dropped from the ceiling. So it's an open concept model, and the objective through this type of floor plan is multifold. One is the overall cost of construction is somewhat lower because we don't have the demising of space with drywall partitions and doors. It also is a more simplified air conditioning, cooling network through the HVAC system, as we don't have to worry about as much confined space and the associated air exchange requirements under ASHRAF requirements. The other is it provides a lot of flexibility to create an adaptable floor plan over time. As technology or workflow patterns change in future years, having this open space, we can readily change the footprint of the work areas more easily without having to worry about internal demolition of partition type walls. There are 2 proposed meeting rooms, one at 6 persons, one at 12 persons in capacity, and 3 breakout rooms. Typically, these are to deal with either small internal meetings or people that come to the customer service counter and either the nature of their conversation is perhaps sensitive, let's say it deals with the taxation related matter, or the discussion is going to take a little bit longer than a normal transaction. This allows the discussion to occur in a smaller room where more privacy is afforded, and those discussions can occur with members of the public. So there are 3 breakout rooms proposed. For the purposes of our modeling, we have assumed a 2-story building that would have a central stairwell, both for staff and the public, as well as an elevator. And the basis behind going with the 2-story building is to create an efficiency of land and to minimize the footprint of the new build. We have assumed a 30% gross up factor for all common space and circulation areas. So we took the square footage for each of the business type activities noted in the space allocation model, and then gross it up by a factor of 30% to account for those common space elements. So when we looked at the space allocation model, we also assessed what business areas of the corporation should be included in the town hall, and were there certain elements of the township's administration or technical staff that could be located in alternate space elsewhere in the building portfolio of the corporation. So the first that was looked at was leisure and community services. So for the purposes of this discussion, we're just going to refer to it as recreation, and we're focusing specifically on the administrative staff. So there is the option for administration staff within the recreation portfolio to occupy the current administration area that's adjacent to the front foyer or the main entrance at the NDCC. When the building was first constructed in 2011, this is where recreation admin staff did occupy, and it was intended over time that that would be the space that they would occupy. This allows for a better interaction with visitors to the building that are here for leisure and recreation activities, and it puts those frontline staff closer to the users of the NDCC as we know it. And this would also facilitate interactions after the township municipal office is closed, because generally the hours of the NDCC typically are between 16 and 18 hours in duration for most of the year on a 7-day-a-week business cycle. So this allows the township, in the fullness of time, to scale up customer service opportunities where the public could interact directly with a staff member, regardless of the day or the hour of the week, whether the municipal office was closed or not. And this would allow for transactions such as paying parking tickets, paying or picking up building permit vouchers and similar type elements, and or just asking questions related to activities occurring in one or more departments. So the recommendation would be that the current space in the existing NDCC adjacent to the front foyer main entrance into the building would be utilized for recreation administrative purposes. So essentially what this means is we don't need to replicate that space in the new town hall. The fire department, 2 options exist. At present, in the 10-year capital forecast, we have identified that the existing community hall area at the Air Fire Station would be renovated and turned into space for fire administration. The alternative would be to allocate space for fire administration in the new municipal office. We've discussed the implications of that, and because we have a small fire service, and we are heavily reliant on part-time volunteer fire personnel, it is ideal to have the fire chief and the deputy chief at the fire station so that as the membership comes into the building to pick up training material, perhaps do their vehicle circle checks, there's a point of contact, and it allows the chief and the deputy chief to remain in contact with their front line personnel, recognizing that they could be entering the building at any point in time. And it just creates that and reinforces that positive environment and engagement. So the recommendation is that the fire administration remain within the original proposal, that being the renovated community hall at the Air Fire Station as outlined presently in the 10-year capital forecast. With respect to public works, we have 2 separate disciplines within public works. We've got operations personnel. Those are the frontline operators and supervisors that undertake the day-to-day 4 seasons maintenance of our linear infrastructure system. We also have administration and technical personnel. So the question is, should we be combining all those aspects in one centralized function area as part of the rebuild of the operations center at 1168 Greenfield? Or does it make sense to keep administration and technical staff here in the new municipal office when it's constructed? We've talked about some of the business functions and the interaction with the public as it relates to the administration and technical space. And because of that public interaction, and it may be associated with building permit activity, it may be associated with Planning Act applications, or just general inquiries of members of the public, we believe that it would be more appropriate for the administration and technical personnel to remain as part of the new municipal office, and space be set aside for them in that regard. In this context, then, operations staff would be housed at the rebuild of the operations center at 1168 Greenfield Road, and functionally the 2 areas would be separated. And so the administration and technical divisions of the Public Works Department would form part of the space allocation for the new municipal office. That deals at a high level with the administrative elements of the corporation and the space modeling then that would be accounted for, and the back of house requirements to support that element of space for administrative purposes. There is, however, the opportunity for council to consider incorporating some dedicated community space or community element space within the new building. Council may recall when we entered into the memorandum of understanding with the North Dumfries Heritage Preservation Society approximately 2.5 years ago, that during the term of the MOU, which had a 5-year term, so we're partway through the life of that MOU, that we would explore the feasibility of programming and display space for the North Dumfries Heritage Preservation Society. Today, they are using an office as well as a storage room for their work and display of their archival material. Not really suitable for climate control, for some elements of their archive, and it really is not effective as a display area for some of their artifacts or their programming to enhance their education outreach to the community.
Andrew, if I could just interject briefly, we've lost quorum. A number of our members of council have reported they've lost power. Just to interject, we only have Councillor Gillespie and Councillor Rolleman on the call.
So I've been in touch with Councillor Osner and sent a message to Mayor Foxton and Councillor McCreary. So they're just restarting their modems. Sorry, there was a power outage. Looks like a crosshair.
If I may, I lost my power and it just took me a bit to reboot. So it looks like it was right across town. It was just a brief blip and that was it.
So does anyone recall where I left off before we lost the members of council?
I can help you with that, Andrew. It was right about my segment for the fire department office space, and you were about to explain the option 2 for the fire department. You just finished up with the community hall renovation.
All right. I'm just going to pull up that slide. All right.
So Andrew, were you thinking of a space for counselors, like one counselor, sorry, 2 counselors sharing one office, or one office that all 4 counselors could use at when they need to use a meeting space?
So what was modeled was one larger office that had 2 workstations in it. And then there may be a small table with chairs where, you know, informal discussions could occur. There'd be a small library of materials relevant to the township.
Okay. Because sometimes members of the public want to meet with us. And in the past, we've had to book, you know, the, what do you call it, Dumfries room or something to meet at.
So there would be the opportunity to reserve either the breakout room, one of the 3 breakout rooms, or the meeting rooms.
Okay.
If there was a member of council already in the councillor office and you wish to have that discussion, you know, as a more of a confidential matter.
Okay. Thank you. So then with PW, then will we be building a smaller building down there on Greenfield Road if we move some of our staff into the new admin building?
Yes, it would be slightly smaller because we wouldn't need either the meeting room location and or I'll call them dedicated office or additional workstations. I mean, we've accounted for some workstations at the new Public Works Depot, but we wouldn't need the same order of magnitude.
Okay. And then with the emergency management, like for the, what do you call it, CEMC, would that still stay at the NDCC, or will we have a backup one at the new works yard, or what are you thinking?
So right now, the NDCC, the Dumfries room would remain our primary. We have a concern presently about having 2 EOCs in air, just because of specifically the rail corridor. And if something happened along the rail corridor in proximity to air, it would affect both the fire hall, which is our current EOC backup, as well as the primary being the NDCC. So we've already had some initial discussions with our friends in Wilmot Township and the ability to use their backup EOC at the new Dundee fire station. Their second floor there is set up with Wi-Fi, and so we would just take our tablets, etc., and be able to migrate to that location.
Andrew, can I ask you to recap in 5 seconds for what I've missed?
So, Madam Mayor, is all members of council now back online?
Yes, everybody's back.
Okay. Madam Mayor, Robert indicated to me that I was just getting into the fire department element as part of the space allocation modeling when the power outage occurred. So I'm going to start from that point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so for the fire department, there are 2 options. Right now in the 10-year capital forecast, we show the community hall at the Air Fire Station being renovated and being adapted to accommodate fire administration, fire prevention purposes. So the alternative would be to bring that element into the new town hall project, and that means that space at the Air Fire Station then would not be renovated. So we have talked internally about, where should fire administration be better housed, and the recommendation is that it remain as originally proposed, being within the renovated community hall space at the Air Fire Station. And the basis behind this largely is in recognition that the department is principally comprised of part-time volunteer firefighters. And by having the fire chief and the deputy chief in the hall available to fire personnel as they come in to do training, pick up perhaps training resources, and or do the circle checks on the trucks, they have the ability to touch base with fire administration, and it will allow for more readily the 2-way exchange of information and ensure strong communication ties between administration and frontline personnel. With respect to Public Works.
Andrew, can I just drop back a bit? So you and Rod were talking, Councilor Roman were talking about the EOC. What was that discussion?
So Councillor Roloman asked me if the principal EOC would continue to be here in the Dumfries room at the NDCC, and my answer was yes. And then I also indicated that we were already looking at an alternative backup location for our EOC because we've got concerns about having 2 EOCs in the community of Air. Because if something happens, let's say along the rail corridor, it would affect both the fire station as well as the EOC at the NDCC. So we've already started to have some discussions with our colleagues in Wilmot Township about using their second floor at the new Dundee Fire Hall as a potential backup EOC location. It has backup power. it has Wi-Fi, and so we would be able to take our tablets to the location and be up and running and be at a safe distance where we could manage an incident as an alternative if for some reason the Dumfries room in the NDCC was compromised. The Public Works portfolio, Public Works is divided really into two different spheres of responsibility. We have our operations component, which is principally comprised of supervisory staff as well as operators that undertake the day-to-day maintenance of the township's linear infrastructure system. And they presently operate out of the Works Depot at 1168 Greenfield Road. We presently have in the 10-year capital forecast a rebuild of key elements of the operations depot. And so the question is, do we move both the administrative and technical personnel associated with Public Works and combine them in one consolidated location at the operations center at 1168 Greenfield Road? Or does administration technical staff continue to be located within the new municipal office project, and operations staff remain centered at 1168 Greenfield? Once again, in terms of internal discussions, the ideal would be to keep the administration and technical staff at the town hall. And this is largely to facilitate meetings with planning and building staff that may occur on development applications or building permit applications, but also to serve members of the public that may be coming in for permits or documents or just general information. And so it allows that technical staff from Public Works to have that direct interaction either with their peers and or members of public. So in this example, it's recommended that the appropriate space allocation be captured within the new municipal office project. So the discussion to date has focused principally on the space that's needed or the components that would be needed to support the administration elements of a future town hall and services provided to residents and businesses of North Dumfries. There is the opportunity for Township Council, as part of the consideration of what goes into the town hall, to incorporate some community elements that are focused on programming space to serve broader community interests. Council may recall approximately 2.5 years ago, a memorandum of understanding, or an MOU, was negotiated with the North Dumfries Heritage Preservation Society. And a key element in that MOU, and the MOU had a 5-year period, and we're halfway through the life of that current MOU. There was an element that spoke to the township would explore creation of programming and display areas for the Heritage Preservation Society. Today, they use an office in the NDCC and they utilize a storage room for their archival materials and documents. The space really is not suitable or ideal for programming or display, nor is the storage room climate controlled to preserve some of the sensitive documents that they have in their possession. So the premise is creating appropriate programming and display space, as well as an appropriately designed archival storage room to support the Heritage Preservation Society. The second element of the community component would be the multi-purpose programming room that would be designed to provide additional programming space. And the design, if anyone's been to the City of Cambridge municipal offices on Dixon Street in downtown Galt. You'll be familiar with the Bowman Room, which is on the lower level, and it's right at the main entry into the ground floor of Cambridge City Hall. And so looking at that on a smaller scale, because obviously the building is smaller that we're talking about here, but the same principles. This room would be flexible in its design. It could be divisible into two small programming rooms. And so the space would be representative of the nature of the use and the occupancy limits. It could be obviously one room with the removal or the collapsing of the divisible barrier. It could be with doors or panels that open to the central foyer that provides the primary access and entry into the municipal office to once again accommodate a larger target audience and occupancy, and the ability to open up doors onto a courtyard outside. And so this room or this space could be programmed many different ways depending upon the nature of the potential activity. These two community elements, which I've just summarized, along with the administrative functions with the recommendations that I made a few moments ago, if we were to include them all, the building area would be approximately 15,700 square feet. If the two community elements that I just spoke about are not included in the building area, in other words, it's truly just a scoped administrative town hall type structure, the square footage of the building would be reduced to a factor of approximately 10,410 square feet. So in general order of magnitude, we're talking about 5,200 or so square feet between the two different models. And that has a significant implications both on the one-time capital budget, bricks and mortar construction, as well as ongoing operating. So obviously the smaller the building, the less cost there is to construct, but it's also the legacy of having to maintain that space year in, year out in terms of heating, cooling, lights, general building maintenance in terms of cleaning, and obviously future life cycle replacement. And we cannot lose sight of the longer term operating costs because they're an annual cost that goes on for the life of the building. It's also important for council to recognize that the two community elements that I summarized a moment ago are not factored into the 21-22 budget estimates for the design of the municipal office project. So if one or both of these elements were to be incorporated, it would adjust the budget numbers that I shared with you at the outset of today's presentation. So then there's the issue of where does the building go and how does it fit into other opportunities that may avail themselves in the future as it relates to potentially the twinning of the arena here at the NDCC or the provision of an indoor pool as two other representative build type projects. Council may recall in August, identified 3 candidate sites here at the NDCC related to potential locations for the new town hall. Each had its own strengths and weaknesses. Excuse me. But for today's discussion, I wanted to show you what the implications are of these future buildings and how the town hall itself could be accommodated without impairing those two other projects if they are to proceed in the fullness of time. So for the purposes of the discussion, the arena as a twin would have an 85 by 200 foot ice surface. It would have seating capacity of between 200 and 250 spectators, the appropriate change rooms and amenity space to make that function area effective and support ice usage. The indoor pool, as spatially shown in the concept plan, is an 8-lane, 25-meter pool. It also has a standalone therapeutic or leisure pool, as well as a standalone tot pool. And then commensurate with aquatic space, there'd be the appropriate change rooms for male, female, and family, as well as the supervisor's area and the support space for both storage as well as aquatics staff. So this concept drawing, which I'm sharing with you, and I'm going to put my cursor over it. So it outlined in black is the existing footprint of the North Dumfries Community Complex, including the North Dumfries Community Health Center, the warm side made up of McNeil Hall and the NPR space, and then the Arena Bowl walking track in this more northern portion of the NDCC. So outlined here in purple, to the east and physically abutting along a common wall is the proposed twin pad arena with the 85 by 200 foot ice surface that I mentioned a moment ago. If I move to the west elevation now, so this is the Dumfries room and the seniors lounge to give everyone some context. There would be the extension from the existing vestibule area at the west approach to the NDCC. There'd be a new building link. And then this would be the new proposed municipal office. And what is shown here is an 8,000 square foot pad. Because if you remember, if we include the two community elements, it was approximately 15,700 square feet. So just for simplicity, I rounded it up to 16,000 square feet, two-story building. And so this shows an 8,000 square foot pad, which obviously would have a second story. Shown here in blue is the indoor pool. It would have a north-south building link to tie into the link for the town hall connecting back to the NDCC. The nice component about the proposed indoor pool, this is your plant, which does your water circulation and your heating, cooling of your water system, and its proximity to the ice plant at the NDCC, which is here, allows for the exchange of cooling and heating between the two facilities, which assists overall in your energy efficiency of both the existing ice surface as well as the water in the indoor pool facility. The other element is the connection through this common corridor allows synergies between the warm side programming space of the current NDCC through to the indoor pool. So for example, if there was an aquatic meet or something similar, they would have access to some of the multipurpose rooms located in the NDCC, thereby adding capacity to the pool facility. If the destination was exclusively for the pool and the pool alone, the entry door at this location would allow them to migrate down this corridor and into one or more of the pools at this location. Similarly, for the twin pad arena, we have the ability to provide connection both on the upper mezzanine as well as the lower level of the existing community complex arena to support the Twin Pad Arena from a public access perspective. And then down the locker room corridor, there's an opportunity for 2 connections through to the ice surfaces between the between the 2 ice surfaces and their associated locker rooms. So effectively, this bigger build, accounting for all potential buildings, allow for integration regardless of the generation and time of when one or more of these buildings would be constructed. The preferred location for
Can I interrupt for a section? Can you go back to the picture, please? Parking is a concern for me. So, because we lose a lot of the parking where the seniors area is now. And as you're well aware, we've now gone up to junior B. When we had junior C games, the playoffs, there was no parking to be had as it is right now. My question to you is, do you see the most easterly side of the proposed twin pad? That land there between the roadway, can that be turned into parking?
Yes, so you can provide parking located along the east edge of the building. If you wished, this space could be additional parking. There's parking that can be added back here. This is inefficiently laid out, including this grass strip is deep enough to add parking. And along the west flank of this, oops, I lost my building. Along the west flank here, additional parking can be added.
Thank you.
So depending upon your building scheme, the timing of the various builds, you could add additional parking as required.
Thank you.
So the preferred location for the municipal office, having an understanding of, I'll use the word protecting a footprint for one or more future buildings that might occur in time at the campus. Staff are recommending that we look at the west side of the NDCC. Council may recall in August, we did identify 2 other locations. The problem with the other locations, the one out in front of the main entry would have significant impacts on current activities and the ability for users and the public to access the building during the construction time period, and would significantly have driven up construction costs to safely negotiate people through a partially constructed building to access the interior of the NDCC. The other being the green space, if I can use that, to the east of the current North Dumfries Community Health Center. Those lands may afford other opportunities that are yet to be known, and to allow for even further grouping of buildings and synergies between the health type activities associated with the North Dumfries Community Health Center, the recreation and leisure programming opportunities here at the balance of the NDCC and Cowan Park. So to provide ultimate flexibility, it would be nice to protect those lands for a high order activity that might unveil itself in the future. So the ability of moving to the west of the current building, it allows minimal disruption on business continuity for programs and user groups that are using the NDCC, whether it be warm side or ice users. It allows us to leverage and utilize a significant amount of parking that's already presently available at the NDCC, remembering that the majority of the business hours of Town Hall would be typically Monday to Friday between the hours of 8 and 5, when we already have low utilization of car park stalls here at the NDCC. There are a number of site services, so electrical power supply and transformer. We have the existing generator that provides standby power. water and sewer services are already present on the property. So while we may have to extend, let's say, the water and sanitary services to the building footprint, the distances are relatively small. And more importantly, we've done a quick analysis of the invert elevations of the sanitary within the NDCC, and we can get gravity fall to the existing sewer, which then is pushed by Forest Main already out to Greenfield Road. And so being able to leverage and maximize some of the historic investments that have been made in the property do reduce our overall site servicing costs. I've shown you in the drawings conceptually the footprint for potential other buildings that might be erected in the fullness of time here at the NDCC, and the proposed location, with the caveats that I've articulated, would not interfere with, impact upon those future building projects if one or more of them were to be approved in the future by Township Council. And there is always the possibility of making the current building larger if that was warranted in time. So staff is recommending that the future municipal office should be constructed to the west of the existing building, and would be connected via a building link back to the NDCC itself. Green energy, green building, environmental efficiencies. The current capital budget does not account for an extensive range of energy efficient or alternative building design elements that are designed to reduce the carbon footprint. The current budget does account for things like energy efficient lighting, tinted windows, and an extensive utilization of windows to bring as much natural light as possible into the building to reduce the need for lighting. And the tinting is meant during these hot summer days to reduce the heat from that lighting, which would drive up air conditioning type costs. The use of zone light sensors. So if an area is not occupied or is a low occupancy area, the lights would automatically either dim and or shut off. And as a person moves into that area, it either trips on by motion, and or you can set your sensors to increase the intensity of light based on the time of year or the time of day, as the case may be. And then there's the building automated software, which controls heating and cooling, where you can put in programmable thermostats, and you can control when heating or cooling is activated based on not only temperature thresholds, but time of day, day of week, or time of season. There is the opportunity to consider more extensive green building elements. And here are some representative examples. Solar panels, typically roof mounted, although they could be the portions of the exterior elevation. But the solar panels could either be wired back into the building to reduce energy consumption within the building, or alternatively sold to the grid in terms of surplus power. The ability to reuse gray water to reduce water consumption. And so what this could be is harvesting water on our roof that normally goes to a downspout and just spills onto the lawn. Well, maybe we're going to use that water and redirect it, let's say, to go for irrigation for the Cowan Sports Park. Or we put it into cisterns and it's used as part of an irrigation
We're batting
Irrigation
1,000.
Is he frozen to everybody?
Yeah, he was. He's okay now. I think he froze
for the
again.
gardens and foundation plantings around perhaps the existing new town hall. We can use
He's gone.
Yep, just give him a minute. CEO McNeely, we lost a lot of that. We got down to,
I'm just logging back on.
okay. I think he's frozen again. There he goes. Okay. So CEO McNeely, we got down to, I believe 3 or 4. Bullet 3 or bullet 4. Nope, he's frozen again, I think. Nope, there he is. And you're muted, CEO McNeely?
Okay, members of council, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right, so can you continue to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I just have to get my screen up so I can see it.
I can do the screen share if you want, sir.
Shelley, is he frozen again?
I think so.
It's an interesting internet night.
Yes, I think it has to do with the power. So I am going to do the screen share for him and maybe he will restart.
No, we don't have him back yet. So that's the right page.
Okay, so you can see the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
We can get it to go like this. We're just talking about the green building design elements and some of the ways that there could be future savings. There could be additional costs up front with some of these elements when you initially put them in, but then over time there's savings. We've seen that with the hydro in the lights. When we changed the street lights, we had a huge upfront cost, but over time, I think it was $100,000 and was repaid within 4 years. So these ones could be similar to that.
Do you think you
Okay.
can handle going forward, Ms. Stedall?
I believe CEO McNeely's back. I'm screen sharing.
Madam Mayor, members of council, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
And I'm screen sharing, Andrew. So I am where you left off with the permeable hardscape to reduce storm.
All right. Talking about green building?
Correct.
Okay. So I was talking about gray water. So I talked about harvesting water from the roof and how it could be utilized, but we can also take the wastewater from sinks and taps and utilize that water as part of either recycled back into the actual toilets and or discharged outside and used as part of that irrigation system or technology that I talked about a moment ago related to the roof. Building materials. whether it be adaptive reuse, in other words, we repurpose spent materials and repurpose them as either primary or finished materials within the building, and or certain types of building materials that have a low impact on the environment. It has a great opportunity for us where we would drill a supply well, and we would bring the well, and it would be topped up for heating in the in the winter, and would augment air conditioning in the during the summer. And essentially what it does is it reduces the shifts of heating and cooling in the seasons and lowers your overall energy bill. And obviously from a perspective of carbon emissions, it reduces our reliance on natural gas to either heat or cool our rooftop HVAC in terms of picking certain plant species, and then permeable hard. All of those elements would be designed to be allow snow melt and rainwater to actually infiltrate through it, which reduces stormwater runoff and promotes infiltration into the groundwater system. So Shelley, can you move to the next slide, please? So what we're basically saying is there are merits at looking at technologies and opportunities. We would outline these elements, and as part of the review of the building, there would be not only scoping out the type of work, but then it would be tested in terms of its return on investment. And I'll use an example. If we look at the ground source heat system, that might have a large one-time capital cost. However, through reduced energy consumption, it may have a payback period of 6 or 7 years. And after that, obviously, we're in a positive trend. So not only would you look at it from the perspective of measurement of greenhouse reduction, or GHG emissions, and in terms of return on investment as it affects future operating budgets and a reasonable payback timeline for that initial investment. And so the recommendation is there are merits. We should do that work, but as we understand what's going into the building and how the building is going to be designed, these elements can be better truthed out, and that analysis can occur. And then based on that assessment, council can determine whether to add monies to the budget to incorporate one or more of those enhanced green building technologies or systems. Shelley, do you mind moving to the next page, please? So, delivery models. There are many variations and permutations. There are 3 core types of building construction: build, design build, and construction manager. I shared with you previously, as part of the information package, a discussion paper that evaluated and summarized each of the characteristics of these 3 models, as well as the advantages, disadvantages,
Ashley, you and I aren't frozen. Are the others frozen?
Advantages of each of these models. Viewing that background paper, but that's where you enter in building, you prepare a tender package, or they're responsible to build based on those construction drawings. That's how the NDCC was conceived back in 2009, 2011 time period. Okay, that's a fairly common approach. It placed more risk on the owner because if anything is omitted in the drawings or things are not clear in the drawings, then it's through a change order, and basically it's typically a time and material factor for incorporating that into the project as a go forward. So the risk gets transferred to the owner. And the other is, generally speaking, it's the longest model for time delivery from conception through to occupancy. The next is design build. And essentially, this is what we did for the skateboard park project in 2020. So basically, as an owner, you articulate the scope of work, the expectations of future finishing or finishes, how each of the different spaces are to be programmed and what you're looking for in terms of end results for that. Sorry, for that type of work. What this means, however, there is one single point of contact because the contractor is both the designer and the contractor. So you're having one set of conversation rather than disjointed with an architect and later with a contractor. It allows efficiencies to occur with the design and build interface. And what I'm speaking to is sometimes we design buildings, but it may not be the best way to do it from a building perspective in terms of how a contractor sees it. And so by allowing the creativity of the builder as the designer, they interface not only the design element, but how they're going to deliver it in terms of project sequencing and construction sequencing. That sometimes collapses timelines as well as creating overall cost efficiencies. The success, however, is the strength of your documents at the outset. It is business critical that the owner provide very clear and defined scope of work and expectations, because the designer and the bid and the construction only flows from that order of magnitude. The next is the construction manager, and it's a slight variation of the design build scenario. But basically what it is you've got a construction manager who is selected typically based on their qualifications and their overall fees. And so they sort of set an envelope for design and they sort of set an envelope for construction. Some of the construction risk of an owner is transferred to the construction manager, because it's how sharp their pencil was and how well they understood the scope of work and the expectations at the outset. The concern always is if the construction manager didn't get the scope of work properly understood at the outset, they're going to try and do a lot of value engineering through the construction phase to bring the project back into their budget so that they don't experience a loss. And as such, you could lose some of the design oversight at the outset, that you said at the outset, based on the budget constraints going forward. So that's why it's so important for you to clarify and be very clear up front what the finishes are, how that space is to be designed and programmed. So it removes some of that risk at the back end. So we have evaluated at a staff level based on the size of the building and the nature of construction and how the space itself would be utilized. It's not a very complex building. And we believe that given its nature and scale, the municipal office could be done through the design, build, delivery method. However, the onus is on us at the outset to have very, very strong statements of expectation, finishes of material, how each space would be laid out, and the finishings for each of those programmed areas within the building. Shelley, with the next page, please. Companion with the construction component, and regardless of which construction delivery model council ultimately picks, staff are strongly recommending that a project manager be retained. Project oversight, construction oversight is critical. This is going to be a time-consuming exercise. We do not have the internal capacity to provide the dedicated time to ensure that the project keeps meeting all of its milestones and to turn information around in a timely manner. A project manager is basically the township's representative and would represent the principal contact on a day-to-day basis. At key points, obviously, the project manager would be tying in with township staff or a building steering committee that may be struck to oversee this project. But the day-to-day liaison and assessment of progress on different tasks would be the responsibility of the project manager. The project manager would also troubleshoot issues before they become a problem and cause delay or potential cost overruns, as well as would, on behalf of the owner, prepare strategies or options for us to consider as alternatives. So you're always trying to be in front of issues as they arise. We believe this person should be retained at the very outset of the project. Leverage their capacity, leverage their knowledge, and that will help us design future bid documents, preliminary cost estimates, ensure that we've got a reasonable and effective project budget, and that we've articulated the scope of work that leads to a successful build phase. Shelley, next page, please. So public engagement and consultation. Depending upon what goes into the building would likely drive how robust and extensive that public consultation and engagement would be. Regardless, there needs to be public engagement and consultation. This is ultimately public funds being used in a future public building. And so everyone needs to understand the scope of the project and have the ability to share in the future composition of what this building looks like. The more community public space, programming space that's incorporated into the building would extend and increase the amount of public engagement and public consultation to make sure that those public programming spaces ultimately serve and reflect the needs and interests of a wide variety of public user groups that may use that space. So the public consultation engagement process can be fairly varied depending upon what goes into this building. How it's delivered. Obviously, we're in the COVID world right now and a lot's being done virtually, as we've seen tonight. That has its inherent problems. However, for the foreseeable future, we know that in-person workshops and public information sessions are going to be problematic. So maybe it's smaller stakeholder group type sessions intermixed with virtual sessions similar to tonight, but it would be set up more as a workshop, allowing participation in a more direct manner. Depending upon how council wants to deliver the public engagement process, we may or may not need we'll bring it forward in terms of facilitation type support. And then there's the question of when and how frequently through the concept and design phase would that public engagement process look like? Is it during the initial background and collection? Is it a second point through the design of an initial concept? And does it continue, let's say, through to the 30% or block plan type drawing details? So as I mentioned at the outset, depending upon what goes into the building, you may have multiple touch points throughout that process. Council may have a steering committee that's part of the building program. So there's different ways of engaging and consulting with the public. Shelley, next slide. So the time schedule. As I noted previously, council has set aside some funds in the 2020 budget to deal with the initial work associated with the town hall project. Staff believe it's important as one of our first actions to issue a request for proposal and move toward retaining a project manager. And that resource would then be available throughout the process to act as a key advisor to council, staff, and if there is a steering committee that oversees this project. The issue of public engagement and outreach. Early discussions and input will lead to a more successful project, especially if we're going to incorporate community programming space into the town hall. We need to, as we gain more information and get a better understanding of some of the key components to be incorporated into the building, we need to go back and test and evaluate the project scope. How does that affect square footage? How does that affect amenity space? How does it affect perhaps finishes within one or more of the building's areas? And then go back and do a Class D of costing evaluation, and how does that reflect against the budget which we've been carrying for the last couple of years? And does that need then adjustments to the budget to account for either new information, an altered or expanded scope of work, and or perhaps some of that green technology that we talked about a few moments ago. Council, then based on that work, would review the budget and the scope of work and make sure that it's consistent with your original expectations, And if there is a shift in budget because elements perhaps have been added to the scope of work or green technology has been incorporated, council ultimately has to give the go or no go. Working on the premise that council continues to have a comfort level, then we would issue a request for qualifications. And if you remember, staff have recommended the delivery model of design build. And so what we would do is this request for qualifications goes out into the marketplace. We give the scope of work, what our expectations are as part of the project deliverables, and the time period, and an overarching element of what the budget is. We would then receive from the construction marketplace bids that would outline their representative experience, projects of similar scope and complexity, references, and the qualifications of their team, and the availability of that team within the timeline that we've articulated in the original request for qualifications. These proposals would be scored, and only perhaps the top 3 or 4 would move actually on to the bid process. So you're culling out a number of firms, and you're getting down to a handful which are all equally competent to complete a project of this size and scale. And we're basically saying we go through the pre-qual process by June 2021. So that's when it would be issued to the marketplace. And then we would do our scoring. We'd narrow ourselves down to 3 or 4 design build contractors. And only those 3 or 4 then would receive the actual design build bid document. So now this gives the detailed scope, all the program space, how it's to be finished by room, what interior, exterior obligations are required associated with the project, etc. And those pre-qualified bidders would then submit to us to complete the project. And so we're saying in the September to October time period, that document will be released to the marketplace. Late fall, perhaps mid-December, the bids would be received. They would be evaluated. And there would be a recommendation to council in January 22 as to whether or not to award a contract. And it's at this point in time, you now have an element of certainty as to what the cost to do the project is.
CEO McNeely, if I may, is that not election? And does
So,
that not, are we in lame duck?
no, not that early. Lame duck does not start January of 22. It is much later in the calendar year.
Isn't the election 2022?
Yes, but it is in October of 22.
That's
Lame
right.
duck happens later in the calendar year.
But CEO McNeely, it puts us in an ambiguous situation because if it's a new council, as it was in 2014, then you've gone through all this work and the new council says, whoa, we don't want to do this. It's all a wasted effort.
Well, if council in January 22, it would be this current council. This current council has the ability to make a decision. This
Isn't 2020, no, 2022. Okay, I see the election is,
October of 22.
okay, I got my years screwed up. Thank you.
Okay. So, roughly 10 months from now, council would be at a pivotal point. You would now have bids from those 3 or 4 qualified design build contractors. You would now have price certainty. This
Right.
is a pivotal point, and that's why I have it in red. Because if council awards the project in January of 22, based on a successful bidder, you're now committed to the project. If you were to abandon the project at any point thereafter, you have a huge penalty as an exit because you have awarded the design and building of the new town hall in whatever configuration it looks like. And as such, there's a commitment on behalf of the corporation to see this through.
Correct. Thank you. I was thinking that September, October number was 2022 because all I have the screen there where the people's heads are and I couldn't see what it said. But it's
So we're 1
2020.
calendar year ahead of that.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Okay, but that January 22 is a pivotal moment once council receives those completed bid documents and if council awards a contract.
Correct.
Okay, obviously you're under no obligation to award a contract at that point in time, but if you do, you've now contractually locked yourself in.
Thank you.
Shelley, next page, please. So we anticipate by April 22, you'd be at 30% drawings. And it would be an appropriate touch point to refine the earlier Class D estimate, just to make sure we're still on message. And that, everything continues to line up with our expectations. Generally, the 30% drawings become a pivotal point where it's hard to, for lack of a better term, take an eraser and rub something out because you've got so much momentum and investments made in terms of not only structural, but mechanical, electrical, and whatever that really start to populate the drawings after the 30% design threshold. So in 22, July, notionally, you'd be moving into the actual construction phase. So you've left design and you're actually starting to break ground with putting in your footings and foundations. And we believe that generally speaking, it's about a year program because you've got your fit up and commissioning, you're moving and all those other sorts of things at the back end. And so you'd be looking at occupancy sometime around July 23. Okay, so high order, those are your key milestones and general timeline from the moment we are today through to when you would occupy that space. So in terms of some next steps, the purpose today was to walk council through what will be key elements in that future staff report, which will be presented as part of the March 22nd meeting. Staff will actually be asking for direction and some decisions from council as part of the consideration of that report on the 22nd. So today was to give you that high-level walkthrough, and hopefully it'll make the staff report on the 22nd a little bit more readily understood when you see it in its fullness. So, Madam Mayor, available to answer any questions that members of council may have on one or more of the elements that have been touched upon as tonight's walkthrough.
Councilors. Councilor Rossner, Councilor Rollman next.
I'm looking at the design of all the buildings there at the NDCC, and I'm still wondering whether the Township Hall should be up there at a final location. I'm thinking that there might be another alternative that would better suit having Township Hall at and leaving our sports facility just as that, leaving room for future sports facilities, including we have the space for the twin pad, maybe the realignment of a possible future pool, and not losing the community gardens, not losing the space off to the west side, etc. So I'm thinking that there might be another option for us to look at.
What, any specific space?
Well, the ACC for one.
Okay, so add, all right. Councillor Bowman, or did you want to respond, CEO McNeely?
So staff did look at the ACC 4 years ago or so. The building is problematic in terms of making it suitable for administrative space, and I'm going to call it circulation. If we use the main level, I guess it'd be to the underneath the community hall. You've got a very low ceiling at that location, and difficult to incorporate HVAC systems and natural light into the building. The other is you'd have to have a significant addition on that lower level. If we were to expand and use both levels, obviously we would significantly interfere then with the current community hall and the space it provides for programming area. On the upper level where the canteen used to be, and once upon a time, the AMHA office and the like, there's not a lot of space there, and it's very long and narrow. And there's obviously concern about public accessing what I call closed portions of what would be the balance of the athletic portion of the building in that type of a scenario. So, you know, while we own the property, if you're trying to do an adaptive reuse of the building, it's not overly conducive. And one of the scenarios that's been presented to council is reprogramming that building for warm side type recreational uses, which would match latent demand in the community for things like volleyball, basketball, and the like.
Go ahead, Councillor Ossner, I'll let you respond.
So yes, I'm not talking about using the footprint as is and trying to reconfigure. I'm talking about having a design to go up bigger, like have a bigger footprint of secondary space, having an engineer look at the how solid the foundation is to expand it bigger, which also would incorporate a community hall. That way we don't have to worry about repurposing the ACC for warm side when we've got tons of space up at the NDCC, which is not being utilized because we haven't run any programs, and we can utilize more at the NDCC and use it for what we designed it in the beginning. We moved to the NDCC as a temporary solution to get out of Slater Hall. So I think that that facility should be used as a sports facility. We're underutilizing that space. We could use we could have a lot more rental, etc. We talked about that before, and that's something for another meeting. But I still think that this building here can repurpose to have a proper community hall, and also build the footprint, like I said, make it taller, renovate it completely, not just try and fit everybody in there, renovate it completely. And I still think that we would be financially better off, and we would have our township services downtown where a lot of people can walk to. We can utilize washrooms downtown, which is lacking. And I just think it would, it's possibly a stronger solution, I think.
Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't disagree with what Councillor Ossner is saying. I think we've talked about having the town hall downtown for a long time, but there's no suitable property. And we've already delayed, as the mayor mentioned, we delayed 6 years. So back in 2013, there was a plan to build a town hall in the same location. But unfortunately, at that time, the township faced a lot of deficits and we didn't have very much money in the bank. I feel now, 6 years ahead, we have some monies from reserves. We have some ability now to finance this and get this done. And the reality is our staff need a proper place to work. So as much as I want to build a pool and build a twin pad, we have to also recognize that our staff need to have a decent place to work. And we need to have a real office for the mayor, so she's not in a broom closet. And we need to have a meeting space for council. And there's certain things we need to have in order to have an efficient government. So I don't think we should delay much longer, and we can spend another 2 or 3 years looking for a suitable location downtown. But I like to see us get this moving. So I think this is a good plan. I like the idea of the pool being attached behind it. The only thing I'm not sure about is the community space. Maybe we should strip that out for now and add that on when we build the pool. That's what I'm thinking may be a sensible thing to do.
It might, Councilor McCreary, if I may for a minute, Councilor Rowland, there's a couple of things I really agree with what you say. The community space is great, but that's what our complex is. Complex is a huge community space. And I don't want to rip apart the hall at the ACC. I was in there when the professionals came in and said, that hall is a big band hall. The sounds and acoustics are perfect. You lose that, you lose one of the best sounding places around. And I'm hoping someday we'll have more concerts in that hall, even if they're small concerts, but that hall is unique. And once you rip that down, you're never going to get that special quality. This professional that came from Toronto said he had never heard such great acoustics as he did in that hall. And I was overwhelmed by what he said. So I want to protect that. And I also like the idea of indoor sports on the arena floor, which makes it easily adaptable. Councilor McCreary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not in favor of renovating the ACC. I think that when we start to retrofit to renovate extensively an old building like that, you often end up getting into problems that you've never anticipated. And I think the ACC should be left as a recreational facility. I think renovating it for the purposes of basketball and volleyball, that type of thing, keeping it as a recreational facility would be fine. That would be relatively easy, I think, to do that, but not to turn it into a complete town hall. Building a sort of almost like a standalone building right beside the current NDCC is going to be much simpler and easy to do. We're not going to run into problems that we could run into with the ACC. So I just like the idea of extending the NDCC. And as Councillor Rowland says, it's about time that we did this. Our staff need a proper place to work. We need proper workflows. We need proper office space. Office hits the proper size. And when we have a new standalone building that we can construct from scratch, we can make sure we get everything that we need, and we can do that and get it done. Thank you.
Councilors, any other questions or comments? Seeing Councillor Austin.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm not surprised that the general comment from other councillors came towards that. However, my point was that we designed the NDCC for a sports facility straight from the beginning. It's a sports complex, sports facility, and now we're turning it into a government building. We moved in a part-time basis temporarily. We took backlash from the community for it because we were taking up space. And my whole point was I thought that the NDCC should stay as a sports facility. However, as usual, I'm the short man on the pole, so
Oh, not always,
just
Councillor
follow.
Austin. I've been short too.
yeah, I know. That's just the way things are going to get done.
It's okay. The discussion's good. Someone called me up about this the other day and said, township, we have to get the township office out of the NDCC. I didn't donate my money to that building, so that township office should be there. And I had to explain to them, your donations did not go to the building. That building is paid for by the ratepayers of North Dumfries. And we are not touching that building. There were no future plans besides a double ice pad for that space. We've gone above and beyond it and left it, adding on 2 more recreational facilities. Plus, down the road, there may be future things as well. So I don't think we're deterring from it. And other municipalities have had their municipal offices adjoined with the recreation facility or center. Since people are already coming there, I think a lot of people have come in and said they like doing everything all at once. They can go and deal with the complex, walk the track, and deal with paying their taxes or whatever else. So they make it a complete trip. I kind of like the idea. I understand what you're saying, Councillor Ossner. We've always sort of had this idea of putting it downtown Central Air. But the reason Sprague's Road was picked because it was actually the dead center of the township. That's where the center of the township is. And that was the theory behind the township office being there. I worry about the increase in traffic and everything else if we do it down at the ACC. That roadway and intersection, I don't think it's the safest, but there's a lot of intersections not the safest. Anyways, is there any other comments, councillors? Councillor Ossner.
Maybe in the staff report, could we have staff maybe investigate how many townships have put a township hall with their sports facilities?
It's not Simcoe. It's somewhere down there I went with a tournament.
Is it a one-off or is it a common thing?
No, it's not a one-off. There's a couple of them I've been to. When I played hockey, there were several places that had the township offices with them. Like, so long ago, Derek, I don't remember them all. But if that's important to you, to want that information, that's I'll ask staff to find it.
I just think it's important information for everybody to see. Every time we have another staff report, we get all these reports of, hey, what this is conducive to what's being done in the region. This is conducive to what's being done in the province.
Staff's not saying this though. This is from
I'm
me.
not
and
saying
just
that
from,
this is conducive to
Yeah.
what's important, but like I said,
and
I'm
staff's not saying it. That's me saying it. It's just like up in Kitchener, Waterloo, where they have the library attached to the arena. And there's a lot of times have incorporated multi-hubs, and we've actually talked about multi-hubbing ours. But regardless of that, any other questions in regards to CAO McNeely's report? Councillor McCreary.
I'm wondering about the renovations to the fire hall. That programming space, I understand it's going to be turned into administrative space. So does that mean that we won't be able to use the fire hall for any rentals anymore? Because it was occasionally used for meetings and groups went in there and used it. There was kitchen facilities. Will we not be able to do that anymore?
So Madam Mayor, through to Councillor McCreary, we've closed that space to the public since March 2020 because of COVID and the concerns about introducing the broader public into that space, recognizing that both EMS personnel as well as fire personnel are, because of spatial separating when they're in the building, are utilizing that footprint. So the intent was when the space was to be renovated, it would be singularly for fire administration, fire prevention personnel. And there would be offices in there along with workstations. The kitchen itself would form part of a lunchroom for the staff that's in the building.
Councillor McCreary, did you want to respond to that?
It's sort of a question along the same line. I'm just wondering how is the programming space, which is being potentially introduced in the new town hall, different from what we already have in McNeil Hall? And do you anticipate an increase in use that would require us to need that new space for programming?
I'm looking forward, to that larger population of the 16,000 persons, not the population that we have today. And it would provide flexibility both for corporate functions the council may have in the fullness of time, but also broader leisure recreation programming space. It would complement your inventory that you have today, but also because of the ability to expand into the foyer, but also outside, it allows a broader range of programming opportunities that don't exist.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Councillor Ossner.
Further to what Councillor McCreary said, I agree with the concern about the programming being lost at the fire hall. I don't understand for a volunteer fire department, why we need so much administration space. I realize that it is shut down due to COVID, but COVID's not going to be here forever. And this is another example of any kind of space in our downtown core or close proximity to our downtown core where people can use. And if that space is gone, then it's just like everything seems to be migrating to the NDCC. We're running out of hall space. We're running out of space where programs, volunteer programs can be run, etc. And it seems to all migrate up to the NDCC. Well, we've got a lot of seniors downtown. And I'm concerned that for the sake of administration, and again, I don't fathom how much administration we need with our fire department, but I'm concerned with us losing any kind of hall space and get together space, community space in downtown air. It's all gone.
If I may, I tend to agree with Councillor Ossner, and I worry about the community club. I worry about the community breakfast and things like that that are run there that do provide a service to the community. And they are easily walking distance in the Hilltop area. So I am concerned about that as well, CA McNeely. And I understand that we will be going with full-time deputy chief down the road as well, I believe, or whatever. I just have concerns about this.
So we do have to remember there is other programming space in that area. There's the Early Ons Center, and there is programmable space there that's available to the community. And we've just talked a few moments ago about the adaptive reuse of the ACC. That tremendously expands the footprint of programmable space for warm side activities that doesn't exist today in or adjacent to the downtown. The fire hall conversion of the existing community hall was proposed and been carried in the budget for the last 4 years because it's the cheapest way of creating that extra space that's required for fire administration and fire prevention personnel. The other alternative would be to undertake a physical expansion to the building, which would be a more significant cost.
Councillor Rollerman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just curious, Chief Shantz is here tonight, so I'm just curious how many other fire halls have rental space in them? Does Plattsville or New Dundee? I don't know if that's even a thing anymore. I thought the idea was that we didn't want to have the fire center, mingling with the public. I thought the idea was to have it more of a private space just for fire services. So I'm just curious, maybe the chief can comment on that. Is this something that he's in favor of, having a rental facility in the middle of a fire center?
The answer to that question is no. I'm not in favor of having intermingling of public space with fire department personnel anymore. I don't know of any other community that has a rental facility attached to their fire hall anymore. Like not in this region. New Dundee does not. No, I can't think of one in this region that has a rental space in their fire station.
I was on council when we built the hall. Actually, when we planned big fights on that hall. Do you remember that, Robert? Mm-hmm. On which side of the tracks were we going to put the hall? And it actually was a hall built specifically for the public. There was the downstairs hall that was built for the firefighters and their training, etc. And the upstairs hall was specifically built for public use. It was never intended for firefighters' use. And it was specifically built with the kitchen for use of the public.
That was then, yes. Now we have a very large growth that is happening in this municipality, and to accommodate that growth, I believe we need to expand our fire station accordingly to respond to that growth and have everything in one. And you have to remember that we do have we are EMS station number 11. And I found that since we have been utilizing our space without public, they have actually come into our facility more frequently and been more comfortable there without public being there, period. And so we do have to remember that it is not just the fire department, it is now EMS also. And if we want to continue to have our EMS partners here, we need to consider that also.
Any other questions or comments? Do we have a resolution to receive CEO McNeely's report?
So Madam Mayor, tonight was just more of a workshop setting. There's no actions to be taken. There will be a formal report to council with recommendations that will form part of the March 22nd meeting. Tonight was more to do a walkthrough at a high level.
Thank you. Okay.
Also give council time to start thinking so that it leads to a better decision-making process on the 22nd.
Thank you, CEO McNeely. So now we're going to move into closed.
Yes, so moved by Councillor Rowland, seconded by Councillor McCreary, that council move into a closed meeting session at 7:49 p.m. under the Municipal Act, Section 239, subsection 2, subsection B, to discuss 1, verbal report from the Chief Administrative Officer, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Municipal Act, Section 239, subsection 2, subsection B. Mayor Foxton, your vote on that?
Yes.
Councillor Rowland?
Yes.
Councillor Ossner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
Okay, that carries.